Good afternoon. I'm Joan Lubar, the Milwaukee Jewish Federation's board chair. Welcome to our special briefing on the Ukraine crisis. We felt it was important to share up-to-the-minute information on the Jewish community members who remain in Ukraine, as well as those who have evacuated. Milwaukee Jewish Federation representatives who recently traveled to the Ukrainian border in Poland and leaders from two of our tremendous global partners will discuss how we are delivering vital support during what has become the largest humanitarian crisis since World War II. Keep in mind, our immediate response to today's staggering needs was not built overnight. It was built over decades. Our national organization, Jewish Federations of North America, and partners like the Jewish Agency for Israel and the American Joint Distribution Committee have been on the ground in Ukraine and neighboring countries year after year. We have worked tirelessly caring for our extended Jewish family and rebuilding a vibrant Jewish community where it had all been but decimated by 70 years of communist rule. Because we had our pulse on the tenuous situation in Ukraine, we were able to prepare in advance and then respond so quickly and efficiently when the war broke out. From stockpiling cash and emergency supplies to preparing for transport to get citizens to safety, we were ready. Our longtime presence in Ukraine was made possible by so many of you, supporters who have generously donated to our annual campaign. The power of the annual campaign has enabled this work to continuously take place in cities and towns across the former Soviet Union, as well as respond to other crisis situations around the world. For so many of us, this war is deeply personal. For me, my father's father, my grandfather, Joseph Lubar, escaped from Ukraine and came to the US. When the Russian invasion began, my family and I knew we wanted to help our Jewish brothers and sisters in Ukraine however we could. And for us, that meant donating generously to our Ukraine Emergency Relief Fund. When the war began, I also immediately thought of Federation leader and my next door neighbor, Tanya Arbit. Tanya, who you will hear from shortly. For Tanya, this is also very deeply personal. Tanya resettled here from Ukraine in 1989 and just returned from the humanitarian mission to Poland. There was no one more fitting than Tanya to represent Milwaukee Jewish Federation, and I am so pleased she had the opportunity to do so. There are so many phrases and logos that roll off our tongues when we talk about the work of the Federation. We say, this is what Federation is built for. We're all here for one another. We're stronger together. And you know what? All of this is true. I take such great pride in our ability to deliver a critical lifeline to protect and support Ukraine's Jewish community. Last Thursday night, Kim Fish, Chief Development Officer of United Hatzalah, called to say that they knew of 6 critically ill Jews who needed to get out of Ukraine and transported to a hospital in Israel, and asked if our federation could help. Of course, we said yes. On Thursday alone, we saved 6 lives. How were we able to do this? Thanks to the hundreds of donors who have supported our Ukraine Emergency Relief Fund. When we called upon our community to once again rise to the challenge, we did. And I am proud to share that we have already raised $500,000 from over 600 donors, and that number continues to increase every day. Today, our first guest will be Dov Mizell, United Hatzalah's Vice President of Operations. Dov will discuss their evacuation of Ukrainians in medical distress, their field hospitals in Moldova, and their efforts to bring urgently needed medical supplies to the area. Next, Tanya Arbit will talk about her highly moving experience at the Polish border with Ukraine. Then we'll hear from Valentina Komenko, Director of Aliyah for the Jewish Agency for Israel, who will discuss their efforts to rescue and facilitate Aliyah to Israel for Jewish Ukrainians. Finally, Julie Shack, Federation's Vice President of Philanthropy, who who participated in the mission with Tanya, will talk about the impact Federation is having during this crisis. Julie will then monitor our closing Q&A session. So I encourage all of you to put your questions in the Q&A questions section at the bottom of your screen. So now please join me in welcoming Dov Mizell. Dov?
So good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to share a little bit of what's been really keeping us busy for these almost 5 weeks. I've lost track of time already. The first call that I got was Thursday morning. I think it was 5 weeks ago. This morning, 5 weeks ago, when we got the call from the community in Moldova talking about many refugees coming into Moldova, and with the community's inability to deal with that. So in Hatzalah, when somebody calls, in Hatzalah, we immediately respond and say yes. And within over the weekend, we sent a team of almost 15 volunteers, doctors, paramedics, and EMTs to assess the situation on the ground there. And surely enough, they had arrived there early Sunday morning, and it was very clear immediately that there's an influx of thousands of people pouring into Moldova, refugees coming from Ukraine. And they called back and said, okay, get the cavalry, literally. And while they started working the ground there on the border crossings, on the southern border crossing of Palanka and the northern border, and within Kishinev, the capital itself, it was clear. The mission was simple. Divided into three for us, as we say in Israel, everything is divided into three. Number one is assistance on the border crossings with medical, psychotrauma, and humanitarian assistance. A lot of these people are coming from a way of 5-6 days on the road, in the cold, sub-zero temperatures, people in hypothermia, dehydration. And when I talk about these people, I'm talking about women, children, and elderly people, because the men are all left behind. They're left at the border crossing to stay. They're not allowed to leave the country. They need to stay and fight. The government doesn't allow them to leave. And we're seeing this, and it's simply heartbreaking. And while we have the volunteers coming in, we're working on the ground to understand that these people need food, they need support. And while we had a small kitchen in Chisinau, we understood that we're going to need much more than that. So when the big team came in on Tuesday or Wednesday, it was already, I can't remember, we had already over 50 or 60 people on the ground working on the border crossings, building field hospitals near the borders, and of course in Kishinev itself, where the refugee centers were, to attend to the medical needs of these people, and at the same time provide whatever other assistance it was. It was putting this big kitchen that we ended up putting together, taking over a restaurant, and at the peak pushing out 5,000-6,000 meals a day to these people that have nothing. These people packed up a life into a little tiny duffel bag where they walked for days, and now are waiting to move on to the next step. And understanding that they can't stay lying in a tent or on a mattress in a refugee center, we need to move them on. And early in the game, we understood that the game changer for these people will be to move them on. There are those who moved independently on into Europe, but we could bring a lot of these people to Israel. And we started an air train and chartering flights to get these refugees, to get these families or broken families out to Israel. And I speak to you today, 5 weeks later, maybe 25 chartered flights that we brought over 2,000 refugees from Kishinev, from Bucharest, from Yash, from Poland, from Lithuania, to Israel, to out of harm's way and into the next step of their life. Some of them will be absorbed in Israeli society, and some of them might move back in the future. But at the moment, they cannot stay there. And while talking about getting these people out, these refugees out, we understood that there's an imminent need within Ukraine. So volunteers of ours in Odessa and Kyiv, in Kharkiv, and in other places throughout the country are providing medical assistance. We went out and purchased ambulances that are operating on the ground as we speak, rescuing people out of there, whether it's Holocaust survivors that cannot leave on their own and go on buses because they are bedbound, whether it's injuries related to the war itself that need to be attended to with advanced care in other hospitals outside of Ukraine, rescuing them, bringing them out, such as those that your flight did last Friday, when I got the call around this hour from the Jewish agency saying we need help to get these people out. And we immediately were called up to the flag, and 24 hours later, before Shabbat, these people were already being pulled into Beilinson Hospital just outside of Tel Aviv. And at the same time, working with other volunteers, getting food and supplies and medical supplies and medications into the Ukraine. We were managed already to land a cargo plane in Slovakia a day and a half ago that was all put onto trucks and into Ukraine. And today, while we speak now, we have dozens of vans distributing medical supplies, medication, and food throughout Ukraine from a supply center that we put together in Uzhgorod in West Ukraine. And we hope to have additional cargo planes going out with these immediate needs for the people on the ground in Ukraine. There are so many missions. And I think that the only reason we're able to do this, well, maybe number one is because of Israeli chutzpah and just getting the job done. But at the same time is having a lot of people, thousands of volunteers, hundreds of them leaving home, leaving work, leaving their families here in order to go out there and help these people that are undergoing a humanitarian and human catastrophe like I've never seen. And I've been to disasters around the world, to Nepal and Haiti and others, but nothing compares to what we're seeing there. And I think that in times that there's so much evil, when we see evil presented in such a strong and vast way, we also see at the same time a bigger response of goodness of people on the ground, people leaving home and going out there to the field to do the work, and those people such as yourselves that are supporting and helping and putting the tools in our hands and our volunteers' hands in the field. So as I wrap up, I'll just refer you to a short video that we'll show that was taken just, I think it was 3 or 4 days ago, of a special mission that we did to rescue 3 Holocaust survivors, and a very special mission that took 16 hours from Kiev. They were transported out to the Polish border where they were put onto ambulances from Poland, and from there on they're taken to Germany. 3 Holocaust survivors that told a very, very special story, and we were humbled to take part in their rescue mission on these 3 ambulances. So here, watch the video of our babushka, we call her.
Israel, Eretz Israel, tomorrow. Montag, Eretz Israel. Okay?
Наш президент, он хороший.
Keep to Eretz Israel, keep. He's going to Israel for the first time. We got him on the plane. He was so scared. And he's still very scared. Misha is very scared, but we're going to get him into Israel. We're going to have a lot of kids dancing for him. Eretz Israel.
So it's not my babushka. It's the other man that we brought last week, who's a 90-year-old survivor who, while eating in our soup kitchen, was describing that the last time that he was sipping soup on the run was many, many years ago when he was a young kid during the Holocaust. And he was so moved and so emotional about getting to Israel, and that Torah scroll that he was holding in his hand is a Torah scroll that was rescued from Odessa and brought in on this flight with him. and he was crying like a kid when we arrived in Israel with him. And these cases are things we see every day there, from the elderly people to the kids and to everyone. So I want to thank you all for this opportunity to share a little bit. I could go on for hours, and I'll be more than happy to take questions afterwards. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dov. Hi, I'm Tanya Arbit, the Women's Philanthropy President-elect at Federation. While I have committed to supporting Federation's work for a long time, my Federation involvement first began more than 30 years ago in a way that deeply connects me to the crisis in Ukraine. I left Kyiv as a refugee in 1989, the capital of Ukraine, where I was born. But I left in peacetime without someone shelling, shooting at me, or trying to blow up my home. Like most Jewish refugees from the former Soviet Union, I grew up with ever-present anti-Semitism and did not openly practice my Judaism until I moved to the United States. I was sponsored by HIAS, the Hebrew Immigration Aid Society, and the Federation to move to Milwaukee, and was reunited with the family here who fled Russia in 1970s. With Federation support, my son and I were able to acclimate, integrate, and settle into our new home here in Milwaukee. Allow me first to say thank you. Thank you to this community and donors like you who opened your doors, your homes, and gave me a new life. Thank you with all my heart. I went back on a mission in 2000 with the Federation to witness Ukrainian Jews who were surviving on the income of less than $1 a day and were suffering from hunger, no heat, and crucial lack of medicine. It was during this mission that I learned more about how, with the money that we raise locally, Federation supports Jews, not just here in Milwaukee, but in Israel and all over the world. Last week, I went on mission to Poland with 30 other Federation lay leaders and staff from around North America. We were on the ground for less than 72 hours. What I saw and what I heard will stay with me for the rest of my life. We witnessed the unprecedented crisis of how over 3 million people who have fled their homes in Ukraine and passed into Poland. To put that into context, this is a number is larger than twice the number of people who live in Milwaukee. Those are just the refugees who immigrated to Poland. There is an estimated 10 million refugees who are seeking safety from deadly and senseless war. It tore into my heart to see and hear the devastating stories of loss. This is by far the worst refugee crisis since World War II. We quickly learned our work is a long, long way away from being complete. It has only just begun. We met mothers and children who spent nights in crowded, airless bomb shelters, only to awaken from their sleep from the shelters. The shelters were destroyed by bombing. Their nearby apartments, buildings were in ashes. They made it onto a bus or train to travel for 24 hours or more to the border of Poland. Most of them had nothing but clothes they were wearing. Their husbands, fathers, and sons stayed behind for battle. We heard from an older gentleman who barely escaped this home when it caught on fire from a Russian bombing. His wife suffered severe burns and was still in a hospital. He shared that his daughter with special needs lives in Israel because they're more equipped to handle her care. They're intending to make Aliyah once his wife recovers and reunite with their daughter in Israel. We visited hotels and offices in Warsaw and Lublin that have been converted into refugee shelters and processing centers. During one of our visits, I met with the mother and her daughter who were from Kyiv. It turned out that the daughter and I went to the same school. We visited with refugees' families at the Warsaw train station, where it felt like a surreal scene from the old war movie. We traveled to town of Medica, a major border crossing from Ukraine to Poland. Nothing could prepare us for the horrific stories and the exhausted looks on the faces of women, children, and the elderly who made these horrific journeys. For many days on end, they traveled through occupied, war-torn territories just to survive. Teachers, lawyers, and future doctors fleeing war and leaving everything but their very lives behind. Many of women had not slept in days. 8 tents along the border were crowded and offered clothing and basic supplies. Over-the-counter sleep aids were in high demand to help battle nightmares and anxiety. Because I speak Russian and some Ukrainian, I was able to speak directly to individuals and translate back to our group. Each story tore my heart out again and again. One story that continues to haunt me is that of a woman named Irina and her 15-year-old daughter, Sophia. Irina shared that it is only she and her daughter alone, that all of the rest of the family had passed some years ago. She shares that she is struggling with nightmares because of the horrific things that she is encountering. From being cramped in a shelter with no electricity, heat, or bathrooms, to witnessing a friend being shot at, to trying to bring water for the group. Before the attack on Kyiv began, she was still going to work as a manicurist. She instructed her daughter on what she should do in the event that she did not return home. She told Sophia, who was only 15 years old, it was time to be an adult. It was time to grow up. My heart burst with that statement. A 15-year-old girl is not an adult and should still be able to enjoy the wonders of her childhood. Sophia was withdrawn and visibly pained from her experience. She shared that she wants to be an artist, and she expresses her feeling through art. When asked, she proudly shared this drawing that illustrated how she was feeling. I was so proud to witness firsthand the work of the Jewish Agency for Israel and the JDC, the Joint Distribution Committee. It was heartwarming to see our partners working side by side 24/7. Jeff is aiding in a transfer of over 6,000 Ukrainian Jews who have decided to make Aliyah to Israel. There is more Jews in 1 month moving to Israel than in a typical year. And the number keeps growing by the day. The JDC is helping to resettle those who wish to stay in Europe, with hopes of returning to Ukraine someday. While at times we felt like documentarians, taking photos and videos like paparazzi, everyone was so grateful for our help and support. I went to witness a crisis, but what I really saw was a miracle funded by our contributions, by your contributions, which enable our partners to work to save, shelter, and rebuild Jewish life. I want to thank people of Poland who opened their hearts and homes to us. I thank Federation for providing me with this opportunity to bear a witness. For me, this was a full circle experience, and I believe that it is now our collective responsibility to ensure that we care for our Jewish brothers and sisters, both in Ukraine and Russia. Thank you. Thank you for all you do and to continue to do. I cannot express in words how proud I am to be part of the amazing Jewish community of Milwaukee, made up of people who come together to take care of this most urgent life-saving needs. Thank you. Now, please join me in welcoming Valentina Homenko, Director of Aliyah for Federation's fantastic partner for Jewish Agency for Israel. But before we get to Valentina, we want to share a video from the Jewish Agency highlighting their work over the past 4 weeks. Since this video was produced, the need and numbers of those making Aliyah has increased significantly.
I never imagined that in the 21st century, it will be real war. Real war with bombs.
האנשים שנמצאים פה ויושבים כאן בעצם הם היו בדרך יומיים שלמים.
I'm so proud to be here with our teams who are working 24/7, working here on the ground in the last 2 weeks to literally save the lives. Save the lives of thousands of our brothers and sisters, Jews who are fleeing out of Ukraine under fire from the war zone to 6 different border stations and facilities that we have formed in order to help them save their lives.
Our staff on ground in Ukraine and outside in the borders in the neighboring country is dealing with thousands of Jewish refugees that need our help. We have 6,000 right now in our refugee centers, and we have another 2,000 that already made Aliyah, and we have hundreds of people that coming every single day.
Our staff does everything, beyond everything, in order to help these people who come in desperate situation, people who travel for 36 hours only standing because there was no place in trains.
מאות אלפים מבני עמנו שחוטפים כעת הפגזות על בתיהם. ואנחנו בסוכנות היהודית עומדים לצידם גם בהוצאה שלהם את הגבולות וגם בהבאה שלהם כאן.
My husband still there. And we are here. And we are safety, but he is there, and my grandmother and my grandfather is there, and my friends, everybody is there.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Valentina Khomenko. I'm a director of the Aliyah Young Programs at the Jewish Agency. And thank you so much, first of all, for having me and for this opportunity to share my personal professional story about what is happening right now and what happened to me for the last month. And Dov and Tanya, your stories were very, very inspirational. And to hear every single story, at the end of the day, we're saying in the Jewish, we really believe in the Judaism that saving one life or saving the entire world. And we all together, we've been able for the last month saving so many Jewish lives and lives in general. And it was possible only because of the support of all of you who've been so committed for the last years. And without your help, we won't be able to do such amazing work that you've all just watched on this video. And I really want to share with you that for myself, as someone who's coming from Russian-speaking background, I was born in Russia 32 years ago and came to Israel on my own in the age of 17. And going with my personal life, going back and forth, back in Russia, going to Ukraine, to other former Soviet Union countries, working in the summer camps run by the Jewish Agency. For me, I saw this as my mission for the Jewish world. And for being a Jewish Agency's professional, it was really, really clear for me that it's a question of hours or days, maybe, when I will need to go to the field and to work with the Ukrainian Jewish refugees. And obviously, I received this call a couple of days after the war started saying, okay, Valentina, in 24 hours, you have to be in the field. And I found myself with other two Jewish Agencies professionals in Bucharest, Romania, with 150 new immigrants, people who expressed their need and want to come to Israel in one hotel. By the way, the first woman they just saw on this video was one of the first women that I met in Bucharest. So every single time when I see this video, I remember her and her family, her two boys who came from Odessa. And from working in one hotel with 150 people, in 5 days, we grew up to 1,000 people working in 5 different hotels. And when I'm talking about working with these people, it means being there for every single moment of their life. I'm talking about providing them with a safe space, with a bed, with meals, with providing with all the treatment meds that they need, the clothing, as was mentioned before. A lot of them were coming with one set of clothing and the set of documents that we were able to take with them before their house was just smashed. The Jewish Agency was able, together with the Nativ, to bring consulate in order to go through the legal process to get visa for those who expressed their want to come to Israel to make Aliyah. And as was mentioned before, we've been able to bring more than 6,000 people already here. And I have to tell you that this piece of our mission back in Eastern Europe, it was just the beginning of that journey. The major part of this journey is about to start here in Israel, when we as a Jewish Agency and the Israel Society will need to observe those people, to provide them with a better future for them or for their kids. And this is the major goal for us today, to make sure that all of these people will receive their benefits from the country, but will also be able to learn Hebrew, to understand what their relationship with this country and why some of them who never thought about coming here and to making Aliyah, why they should see this place as their home. And maybe some of them will go back to Ukraine and to rebuild their Jewish immersive communities that they used to be there. But some of them, or most of them, we don't really know, will stay here. And we have to make sure that they will build this relationship with this country. And this journey have already started back there in Eastern Europe. Working on the field, we really realized in the really beginning of our service there, that we have to provide with these people not only with the food and medicine, which is the most important pieces of our life, but with experiences, with the Jewish experience, to start teaching them Hebrew, to provide them with Shabbat experience, because these people, for some of them, that was the first time where they celebrated Shabbat together. And I can't explain you, and I can't even, pass this experience to you, standing with 5,000 people, lighting Shabbat candles, and understanding that for the first time they can feel safe for the last couple of days or hours. So I think we have a lot of stories that we can tell, but I have to tell you that I couldn't see myself more proud of the organization that I'm taking part of it and working for the last couple of years, to see people coming and saying, thank you so much for doing everything. And I've known who is my address to come and to take me off this journey with the Jewish Urgency, because I took a part in summer camp, or my kids made Aliyah through one of our Aliyah programs. So at the first day of the war, I did know who to call and who will be the people who will come and rescue me and help me and will take me off this situation. And a lot of times, I made my way back home 2 weeks ago, and a lot of people are asking me what I'm taking for this journey. And I think that the major take for me is the new understanding of the term of Jewish peoplehood. I always will tell, as someone who did shlichut in the United States, I would always say, Jewish peoplehood, it's a feeling of my distant family. I continue keep in touch with students who were a part of Hillel at UMass Amherst, where I served for 2 years. I would tell, I feel their pain, and I celebrate everything that they have to celebrate, because we are the family. But today, I really realized that the Jewish peoplehood, for me, it's also the responsibility that we all have around our distant family. So thank you so much for everything you're doing for all of the Jews around the world. And without your support, we would never be able to do such amazing work that we're doing right now. And we'll continue doing it together. So thank you so much, and Shabbat Shalom. I'm staying with you if you have any questions.
Thank you, Valentina, for all that you and your colleagues are doing to support this crisis. Good afternoon. I'm Julie Shack, Milwaukee Jewish Federation's Vice President of Philanthropy, and I had the honor of traveling to Poland with Tanya. It was so moving to experience this humanitarian mission together. Seeing the crisis through Tanya's eyes and seeing the parallels between Tanya's experience and the experience of the Jewish refugees we met added even more meaning to the mission. I also was so fortunate to take this journey with someone who speaks the language of the families and individuals we were helping. I know Tanya's presence was a great comfort to them. You have already learned so much about the impact we're having as a community. Now I want to share some really astounding numbers for you. Together with JFNA, we have raised over $40 million collectively across North America. Together, we have provided a lifeline to not only the 200,000 Jews in Ukraine, but to more than 3.2 million refugees. I am also excited to share that JFNA is creating a North American Jewish volunteer hub for the crisis. Through a centralized application process, it will place North American Jewish volunteers within Jewish and Israel partner organizations working on the borders of Ukraine. Watch for more information on this announcement soon. This is just another reminder of the tremendous work that is happening each day in partnership with organizations like JFNA, United Hatzalah, Jaffe, the JDC, World Ort, and others who are deeply rooted in Ukraine and the region. As Joan explained earlier, this outstanding response has been made possible primarily through decades of work. Approximately 30% of our annual campaign dollars goes to overseas Jewry each year. Over the last 10 years, our Milwaukee Jewish community has donated $15 million to overseas causes alone. All of this enabled us to have the infrastructure in place in Ukraine and its neighboring countries before the war started. which just reinforces the importance of annual giving. If you haven't already made a gift to the Federation's annual campaign, I hope you've been inspired to do so. Whenever and wherever one Jew is threatened, we are all threatened. As you have heard, the needs created by this war are staggering. This is why the Milwaukee Jewish Federation launched our Ukraine Emergency Relief Fund. So many of you have already contributed, and I thank you. As Joan shared earlier, this wonderfully generous community has raised $500,000. However, this crisis is going to have long-term effects for many years to come. There is still an opportunity to support our emergency relief fund so that together we can continue to meet our global Jewish community's ever-evolving needs. 100% of the dollars raised this campaign will go directly to the refugee crisis. More than anything, I want to thank all of you. Thank you for taking the time this afternoon to learn more about the crisis. Thank you for supporting our work through the years and today during the most serious of times. You make it all possible for us to fulfill our sacred mission in Israel, Milwaukee, and around the world. Now we'd like to open it up for a few questions. You can put your questions in the Q&A chat at the bottom of the screen. All right, it looks like our first question is, I'm going to pose this to Valentina. And the first question is, what is happening to the Jews in Russia?
So thank you for the question, first of all. And I have to tell you that we do see increase of especially young Jews from Russia coming to Israel. And people feeling unsafety, people are feeling that their economical future is really, really uncertain. So they're taking their moves. So for the last, I would say 2 or 3 weeks, we have experienced around 2,000 people coming from Russia. And I think this question can help us also to showcase the difference between two of the communities, right, that we're working with. If we're talking about Ukrainian Jews who are coming mostly as elderly and women with their kids from one hand, from another hand, Jews from Russia, mostly coming from big cities such as Moscow and St. Petersburg. And most of them who we've been seeing are young people who looking for expressing their need to come and to find a better solution for their future mostly. And that's what I'm at my position in the Jewish Agency, what I'm doing. We're taking them to our programs, Aliyah programs, where they can actually start their new journey here, studying Hebrew and preparing themselves for the independent life here in Israel.
Thank you. Another question that came in, and this might be for either Dov or Valentina, would it make sense to send clothing to Israel for the Ukrainians?
I think I'll let Valentina answer that, because we actually what we're doing is primarily working on the ground and abroad. However, we are seeing, there's a lot of support from within the community in Israel. So I don't know to say if there's a real need to actually send clothes to Israel. There are plenty of thousands and thousands of people from the Israeli society, from the different communities coming out to help absorb these refugees, these olim that are coming to Israel. I didn't encounter a need for support of clothing from outside, but then again, I'm not the hub of information for that.
Yeah, I would actually agree on that with Dov. I think that the amount of clothing that were collected and also were sent to the border and to the Eastern Europe countries, but also some of this clothing we're keeping and we're giving in there to the refugees who came through the hotels. So I think also, we usually now we enter the crisis and everyone are looking for opportunities to give and help. I think we will also need to make sure that we will continue helping to those people for the next month and years. So I think for now, the we really received a lot of help, a lot of support of clothing and mats and so on, but we'll need them in the future as well. So maybe take a little bit of time and to see what their need will be in a couple of months, and that will help us to prepare the better solution or better response.
Great. The next question is, again, directed to either Valentina or Dov. Have you been able to assist children in orphanages in Ukraine?
So I'll take it off, and then Valentina, I'm sure you have what to add on that as well. There are many orphanages in Ukraine. It really is based off of the local need. There was evacuations that were done of different orphanages to neighboring countries. Sorry, I apologize for that. And definitely there is treatment of kids. There's also a situation there that families have been torn apart. We've also seen cases that kids have been left alone. I'm talking about younger teenagers, 10 years old, 12 years old, that left their homes on their own and made their way to the borders, to cross the borders on their own and make their way to Israel or to Europe or other places, get to the refugee centers. We came across a lot of those, actually. We even treated a whole bunch of those and brought them to Israel. There was some astounding stories there. I mean, it breaks the heart, because some of them have a family member in Israel and the father can't leave, so the mother will say, okay, I'll stay with the father, and the kid will make his way on buses and other ways to the border. It really is an impossible situation. But yes, there's definitely treatment there in the orphanages. There's support from the communities that stayed behind. There is support there, or assistance, the will to support, and wherever we come across it, we'll try and help. Valentina, I'm sure you, from your perspective, can share a little more, because you see the broader picture maybe from the...
Yeah, I would say that we obviously were experiencing those kids coming with also like there are a lot of legal issues in the end of the day to take kids who are under age of 18 to the other country. Imagine that. So we've been able also to help to those kids also to make their way to Israel. And here we're taking care of in our programs such as Naale and Sela and another 2 additional programs that we were able to open in Carmel and in Nitzana in the south. So where we taking as a purpose taking care of those kids and hoping that their relatives, their parents mostly, will be able to make their way here and they will reconnect.
Great, thank you. Again, this question comes in for Valentina. Do non-Jews ask for Jaffe's help at the Polish border? And if so, what happens to them?
Okay, so first of all, I would say that everywhere in every country, we're working in 5 countries in Ukraine, Poland, Romania, Hungary, and Moldova. So in every country, obviously we would meet people who are just coming on the buses that the Jewish Agency was able to arrange for them. And then we will provide everyone who would ask for help with one night at least in the hotel to make sure that they have time to get a bit of rest. And what I did in Bucharest, basically one of the first thing that I took on my own to reach out to different local organizations who offered help to Ukrainian refugees. And I would put them in touch so they could understand what kind of benefits they can receive as their refugees, and they would stay in Romania or will continue to the other countries. So we would definitely meet those people who were looking for help as well.
Great, thank you. Another question that's come in is, do we know how many Jews have been evacuated from Ukraine so far?
We can, like the numbers that we as a Jewish Agency have, these are numbers of people who we've been able to take on the flights and to transfer them here to Israel. So we're talking on more than 6,000 people that was mentioned before. But I do know that some of the hospitals, and maybe Dovya will add on top of it, also brought additional people. I don't know if like what their legal status, but I know that they were brought on behalf of the hospitals, and I believe that on the Huda Tzara as well.
Maybe I'll add into that is our cooperation working with the Jewish Agency in Moldova and in other places. We were focusing on those who can't make it on the Jewish Agency flights because of their Jewish status, because of paperwork issues, because they're not candidates for Aliyah per se, but we facilitated this platform for those people, and we brought over 2,000 people to Israel that got approval to come into Israel, but weren't necessarily with proof of Judaism or a law of return and others. So we brought 2,000, but I can also add to that is that there are many Jews that aren't coming to Israel, that are moving on into Europe from Poland, from Moldova, from Slovakia, Hungary, and other surrounding countries, that are moving on into Europe to Germany and to other countries that are providing what's the word for it in English? Providing the refugees with everything that they need, medical insurance and housing and whatever it is, because their policy of refugees is much more lenient than Israel is with the requirements in order to come into Israel. So there are many Jews that are not even thinking and don't want to come to Israel, but are heading into Europe.
And I would say that we also would see them in our centers. So they would come usually with their communal buses, and they will let us know day after that they're planning on continuing to other countries, and they will purchase their tickets and will continue their journeys.
Great, thank you. We have time for one more question, and the question posed is, will refugees come to Milwaukee? And if so, how can we help? I can turn this over to Tanya as well, but just to answer from the Federation standpoint, the question is, of course, and we will wait word of who comes to Milwaukee, and certainly through our partners through Jewish Family Services and other community partners, we will do all that we can to help refugees immigrate here safely to Milwaukee. Tanya, is there anything else that you want to add? Because I know that you're involved in the Ukrainian community.
Thank you, Julie. Yes, we are been waiting to know how many and what number of families will be coming to Milwaukee through the Jewish Family Services and through Ukrainian community. And I know it will be a second round for our community to help. We have our experience, and I'm sure that there will be posting information on how in the future we can help those families. And thank you for your support.
Okay, this about wraps up our program. Again, I want to thank Valentina, Dove, Tanya, and Joan for this very moving and inspirational program. And thanks to everybody that joined us today. Be well.